For the last 6 years, one of the most powerful regulatory agencies in Washington operated with zero congressional oversight. It acted as an unaccountable, partisan weapon. But a high-stakes Senate Commerce Committee hearing has finally brought the Federal Trade Commission out of the shadows. What was exposed is a staggering contrast between a rogue, weaponized past and a massive, record-breaking turnaround under new leadership. During a scathing opening statement, the committee chair laid out how the FTC is finally clawing back billions for the American people, while issuing a severe warning about how close this agency came to becoming a permanent national nanny. Let's look at the breakdown. The hearing kicked off with some absolutely jaw-dropping numbers. The chairman welcomed the new FTC chairman, Andrew Ferguson, and Commissioner Mark Meadow, revealing a massive shift in enforcement results. In just one single year, the newly reformed FTC has successfully returned more than $3.2 billion in ill-gotten gains directly to American consumers. Let's put that number into perspective. In just 12 months, this new FTC clawed back more money for consumers than the entire Biden administration did in 4 years combined. And they aren't stopping at corporate fraud. On the very morning of this hearing, the FTC filed a major settlement against advertising firms that had illegally colluded to boycott conservative news sites. This is a massive win for free speech and a complete dismantling of corporate censorship. But to understand how the FTC became so corrupt in the first place, the chairman took us back to 1914. When President Woodrow Wilson created the FTC, he envisioned an independent, impartial agency of experts who would magically rise above grubby politics. Congress gave them incredibly broad, undefined powers to stop unfair practices. But the chairman pulled no punches, calling Wilson's idea of an omnipotent bureaucracy a total fever dream. Instead of relying on real federal courts, the FTC created its own administrative courts, acting as investigator, prosecutor, judge, and jury. This is how the bureaucratic trap works. The FTC uses its broad investigative powers to bully businesses. Companies settle out of court just to avoid catastrophic public relations damage. The FTC then slaps them with decades-long consent decrees that read exactly like laws. This isn't case-by-case enforcement. It is rogue, unelected bureaucrats legislating from the shadows. This kind of massive overreach has happened before. Back in the 1960s and 70s, the FTC went on such a radical rulemaking binge that the Washington Post officially dubbed them the national nanny. Back then, Congress put its foot down and completely defunded the agency until they reformed. Fast forward to the Biden administration, and history repeated itself. Under former chairwoman Lina Khan, the FTC completely abandoned its statutory mission. The chairman noted that Khan went well outside legal bounds to pursue a weaponized, highly partisan political agenda. The real-world casualty? The professional staff inside the FTC. Career lawyers and economists saw their agency turned into a partisan attack dog, causing employee morale to completely plummet. Worse yet, Congress treated the FTC like a regulatory genie, refusing to hold a single oversight hearing for 6 years. Every time a new problem popped up, like big tech or AI, lazy politicians just made a wish and said, "Let the FTC handle it." Think about how dangerous this is. Congress considered bills that would turn the FTC into the national speech police of the internet, and even have them take over college sports from the NCAA. When Congress treats a rogue agency like an all-powerful genie, the American people lose. But the era of blank checks is officially over. Thanks to landmark Supreme Court rulings like West Virginia v. EPA and Loper Bright, the legal landscape has shifted. The chairman made it clear that the Senate is finally going to do its job, regardless of which party is in the White House. Congress is now moving to heavily reform these weaponized consent decrees, which will cut red tape on small businesses, lower consumer prices, and stop the bureaucratic censorship of American speech. The presenter's takeaway is undeniable. It has been 30 long years since Congress meaningfully reformed the FTC. Under the new leadership of Chairman Ferguson, the agency is finally returning to the rule of law, protecting consumers, and ditching the partisan attacks. This hearing proved that when Congress actually stands up and conducts real oversight, the deep state shrinks, and the American taxpayer wins. I'm United States Senate Liv. We are following the money and the power right here.
Earned more than $3.2 billion in ill-gotten gains to consumers, more than the commission returned during the entire Biden administration, more in 1 year than the Biden administration did in 4. And just this morning, the FTC is filing a settlement with major advertising firms that had effectively colluded to boycott conservative news sites. Whether advancing free speech or preparing to enforce the landmark Take It Down Act, which holds big tech accountable for deep-fake revenge porn, or stopping deceptive ticketing practices, it's clear you've been busy. It's a job well done, and I look forward to hearing more about the FTC's recent successes. In 1914, Congress created the FTC in line with President Woodrow Wilson's vision of an expert, independent, and impartial agency that would supposedly put politics aside. Congress delegated broad authority to protect consumers from unfair or deceptive acts or practices and unfair methods of competition. It intentionally did not define or articulate these terms, believing that a flexible, adaptable FTC could use its expertise to develop them through case-by-case enforcement, with courts serving as the check. But President Wilson's fever dream of an omnipotent bureaucracy, precisely weighing benefits and cost free from grubby politics, has not come to pass. At times, the FTC has stretched its powers far beyond Congress's mandate, inserting itself in nearly every sector of the economy in ways unaccountable to the public. Rather than rely on Article III courts, the supposed backstop, the FTC has used its administrative courts. Rather than prove its case in court, the FTC is too often sued to swiftly settle, imposing detailed, forward-looking obligations and consent orders that read more like legislation than case-specific remedies. Given the FTC's broad investigative powers, businesses that dispute allegations of wrongdoing often have no choice but to comply rather than risk the reputational harm that can stem from a public fight. There have been times when the FTC has exercised such tools judiciously. There's no doubt the FTC's antitrust and consumer protection missions remain critical. I saw firsthand when I headed the FTC's Office of Policy Planning, working alongside skilled staff on complex issues of technology, competition, and consumer protection. But when Congress delegates broad powers to an agency without guardrails or limits and without conducting consistent oversight, that agency inevitably will test and expand its authority. It's why, during the Biden administration, FTC Chairwoman Lina Khan went well outside the agency's legal authority and instead pursued a weaponized political agenda. It was hardly the first time the FTC unlawfully expanded its authority. Notably, in the 1960s and 70s, amid a period of FTC massive overreach and rulemaking binges, even the Washington Post dubbed the agency the, quote, national nanny. How did Congress respond then? It exercised its own authority and refused to fund a rogue agency until the agency instituted reforms. That history is instructive. In light of the Supreme Court's decision in EPA versus West Virginia, and in Loper Bright as well, Congress has a clear responsibility to review the authorities of each agency, including the FTC, to more carefully define and limit them. That's how we keep agencies accountable to the American people. It's shocking, then, that it's been nearly 6 years, the entirety of the Biden administration and the Democrat-controlled Senate, since the FTC commissioners appeared before this committee for an oversight hearing. Instead of asking hard questions of the FTC, Congress has treated it like a regulatory genie. Whenever a problem emerges, particularly one involving new or rapidly evolving technology, we make a wish and say, let the FTC handle it. For example, Congress has considered legislation to have the FTC regulate the totality of the internet through sweeping data privacy rules. AI, setting up the FTC as the national speech police. And college sports, replacing the role of universities in the NCAA. When Congress does give FTC new authorities or responsibilities, it never seems to revisit the existing broad powers the FTC has misused in the past. The last time Congress meaningfully acted to restore accountability at the FTC was 1996. 30 years is long enough for Congress to go without seriously considering FTC reform. One clear area of need is consent decree reform. Time and again, the Commission has saddled companies and their workers with multi-decade orders that go far beyond correcting for any alleged misdeed. Done right, consent decree reform has the potential to eliminate red tape on small businesses, lower prices for consumers, increase investment, create jobs, grow the economy, prevent censorship of American speech, and hold bureaucrats accountable. I'm hopeful that my colleagues and I might be willing to work together on this. I will say there are other areas where the FTC can and should do more within its core areas of expertise. This committee has already acted by passing the Take It Down Act, and many of my colleagues on both sides of the dais have put forward thoughtful, practical bills to crack down on deceptive and hidden fees, address bots in the ticketing market, and better protect Americans from frauds and scams. As I noted, during the Biden administration, this committee did not conduct a single oversight hearing into the FTC, even though this is the Trump administration and it will present an opportunity for senators of the opposing party to ask hostile questions. This committee believes oversight is a responsibility. It's why we've had already an FCC oversight hearing and why we're having this FTC hearing, because the Senate is going to do its job. I will say today I look forward to hearing from Chairman Ferguson and Commissioner Meador on how they are working to rebuild the FTC's morale and legitimacy. One of the saddest legacies of Chairwoman Khan was the FTC, an agency with professionals, with lawyers and economists who loved their work. The morale plummeted. And when the agency lost sight of its statutory mission and instead became a partisan attack dog, that understandably had a negative effect on the professionals who work there. So I look forward to hearing how the FTC is now focused on faithfully enforcing those laws that Congress has enacted rather than stretching beyond them.